Have you ever just stopped to look around at the sheer complexity of human society and wondered, how on earth does all of this actually work? I mean, from the unspoken rules of how we queue up for a cup of coffee to the sprawling, massive global trade networks that actually get those coffee beans into our hands, human behavior is just incredibly intricate. And to make sense of it all, we really can't just rely on our own single viewpoint. We need different frameworks, or what sociologists call lenses, to truly understand the mechanics of how our societies operate, how they evolve, and, well, how they sometimes fall apart. So, welcome to this explainer. Today we're going to decode the major sociological theories to help you clearly see the hidden structures governing our everyday world.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today's analysis. We're going to start with the social puzzle, then tackle order versus power. After that, we'll look at global and environmental scales, decode everyday symbolic meanings, and finally, bring it all together to see the complete picture.
Section 1. The social puzzle. So society isn't just one big monolith, right? It's like a giant puzzle, a massive, complex web of interactions that has evolved over thousands and thousands of years. And to understand where we're at right now, we kind of have to understand where we started. When anthropologists look at the earliest human societies, they observe this really fascinating transition. For a very long time, we were hunter-gatherers, but then a massive shift occurred. We moved to permanent settlements. This was driven primarily by favorable environmental conditions and, crucially, the domestication of plants and animals. But here is where the puzzle gets really complex. As those settlements grew into massive populations, you know those informal kinship networks? They just weren't enough to keep things running anymore. Growing populations absolutely required the creation of formal institutions. Suddenly, you've got governments creating tax systems, legal codes, and bureaucratic administration just to manage the sheer volume of people. This timeline really sets the stage for everything we're about to talk about.
Section 2. Order versus power.
Okay, so once you actually have these massive, complex societies with formal institutions, how do they function day to day? We have to ask ourselves this critical question. What fundamentally drives a society? Is it a natural drive towards stability, where everyone and everything works together in harmony, or is society inherently driven by competition, where individuals and groups are just constantly vying for an upper hand? Honestly, how you answer this specific question completely determines which sociological lens you're looking through.
And this brilliantly illustrates the big showdown in sociology. It's vital to clarify the difference between these two heavyweight theories. On the left, we have structural functionalism. This framework views society as a system whose institutions work perfectly together to maintain stability and social order. So a functionalist looking at a school sees an institution that contributes to socialization and stability. It teaches us the rules, so the societal machine just keeps humming along. But on the right, we have conflict theory. And this lens, it throws harmony right out the window. According to conflict theory, social change primarily results from competition over scarce resources and power. A conflict theorist absolutely doesn't see a school as a harmless tool for stability. They'd likely see it as an arena where advantages are unequally distributed. Focusing on this difference is key for us today. Functionalism sees cooperation for order, while conflict theory sees a rigged game over scarce resources.
Now, within that functionalist camp, the one striving for stability, we got to talk about the pioneer, Emile Durkheim. Durkheim asked a pretty basic question. How do modern societies not just tear themselves apart? His answer was a concept called organic solidarity. In modern, highly specialized societies, he argued that we maintain cohesion primarily through complex interdependence. Basically, you do your specialized job, I do mine, and we rely entirely on each other to survive. We're literally like the organs in a body. It's this deep interdependence, rather than just shared traditions, that glues modern society together.
But let's flip the coin over to the conflict side, where you run right into Karl Marx and his theory of historical materialism. Marx completely disagreed with the whole harmonious organic solidarity thing. He argued that the primary driver of societal development is not shared values or interdependence, it's the economic base and class relations. For Marx, the true engine of history is the struggle between those who own the resources and those who actually do the labor. It's a lens entirely focused on economic power and the massive friction it creates.
Let's move to and see how this builds into the political perspective. If conflict theory shows us the underlying struggle for resources, the political perspective is most concerned with how power is practically distributed, exercised, and legitimized within a society. It argues that power relations and governance structures are what ultimately influence social order. Who gets to make the laws? Who enforces them? This perspective tells us that social order isn't just some happy accident. It is carefully engineered by those holding the reins of governance.
Section 3. Global and environmental scales.
The theories we just discussed are fantastic for looking at single nations or institutions. But what happens when we zoom way out to the level of the entire globe, or even look at humanity's relationship with the planet itself? First up, we have Herbert Lenski's theory of social evolutionism. When Lenski looks at the grand sweep of human history, he suggests that civilizations advance fundamentally through improvements in two key things: energy capture and technological capability. Just think about it. The leap from using human muscle to harnessing animal power to burning coal to splitting the atom. As a society's technological ability to capture and use energy expands, the civilization itself advances and grows exponentially more complex.
So the crucial point is, when civilizations advance and globalize, they definitely don't do it equally. And this brings us to world systems theory. This theory divides the globe into two main categories. First, you have core regions. These are the wealthy, highly industrialized nations dominating global wealth accumulation. But second, you have peripheral regions. World systems theory argues that global wealth accumulation heavily depends upon the structural exploitation between these core and peripheral regions. Simply put, the core gets rich by extracting resources and labor from the periphery. It's basically conflict theory, but playing out on a massive planetary scale.
And of course, none of this happens in a vacuum, right? It all happens on Earth. The environment is our ultimate foundation. First, consider Jared Diamond's concept of geographic luck. This emphasizes that some civilizations developed and thrived simply because of favorable ecological and environmental conditions. Better crops, domesticable animals, and easier climate. But the environment is a double-edged sword. Conversely, we see ecological overshoot. This is what happens when a society pushes too far, resulting in the complete collapse of a civilization due to excessive environmental exploitation and the rapid depletion of its resources. At the end of the day, nature always has the final say.
Section 4. Everyday symbolic meanings.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is, we're going to pull the camera all the way back down to Earth, from massive global structures to our individual daily interactions. Look at this simple sentence. It's just a piece of cloth. Physically, scientifically, a flag is exactly that, right? It's literally just dyed fabric sewn together. There is absolutely nothing inherently powerful about the fabric itself. But we all know that a flag is much, much more than a piece of cloth. People will cry for it, they'll fight for it, they'll die for it. So, why?
Well, the answer lies in the lens of symbolic interactionism. Unlike the macro theories that look at vast structures like the economy or the government, this perspective focuses entirely on interpretation. It argues that our daily interactions create shared meanings among individuals. Examining how people interpret the meaning of a national flag is just the perfect example of symbolic interactionism in action. We, as a society, interact with each other, and we collectively agree to assign profound meaning, history, and emotion to that specific piece of cloth. The meaning isn't baked into the object itself. The meaning is created in the space between us.
Section 5. The complete picture.
So we've looked through the lenses of functionalism, conflict theory, the political perspective, world systems, and symbolic interactionism. And they each tell a completely different story about the exact same society. And that is precisely why it is so absolutely crucial to use multiple frameworks when analyzing societies. Human societies are incredibly complex, and no single perspective captures the entire picture. If you only look at the world through conflict theory, you might miss the very real ways we cooperate and build stability. If you only look at symbolic interactionism, you might completely miss the invisible global economic forces shaping your own town. You need all of these lenses in your toolkit to avoid major blind spots.
So, I want to leave you with this final thought. We all have a bias. We all naturally gravitate toward one specific way of explaining the world. Think about the last time you watched the evening news, or even just walked through a busy city. Were you looking at how the institutions maintained order? Were you noticing the competition for power? Or were you maybe looking at the shared symbols people were using to communicate? Which sociological lens do you default to when looking at the world around you? Take some time to figure that out, because the lens you use ultimately determines the reality you see. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the structures around you.